What do you do when God doesn't explain himself? When you pray and heaven stays silent, when you obey and life gets harder instead of easier, when nothing about God's plan makes sense anymore. Here's the problem. Most Christians are told to trust God in moments like this, but no one ever explains what trust actually looks like. When clarity never comes, and if you're waiting to understand before you obey, you may be stuck in the very place God is asking you to move. Stay with me. What are you supposed to do when God doesn't explain himself? What do you do when God's plan doesn't make sense to you? When the answers you prayed for don't come? When the doors you thought would open stay closed? When someone else gets the healing you begged for? What are you supposed to do with that? Because if we're honest, most of us don't really know. We've been told to trust God when life doesn't make sense, but no one ever explains what that actually means. So does it mean we pretend everything's fine? That we silence every question? That we stop feeling confused or hurt or angry? Or is there something deeper we're missing, something Scripture actually calls us to, that most of us were never taught? That's what we're going to walk through today. Not hype, not comfort, just clarity. Stay with me here, friend, as we unpack this by letting the Scriptures shed some light on what we are exploring here. One might ask, does trust mean you're supposed to understand first? Here's the tension most of us live in. We say we trust God, but when life stops making sense, we freeze. We wait for understanding before we move. We demand explanation before we obey. And when God doesn't answer on our timeline, we start to wonder if he's really good. Now listen, that's not rebellion, that's being human. But somewhere along the way we were taught something dangerous, that trusting God means understanding God, that faith requires clarity, that obedience should make sense first. And when it doesn't, we assume something's wrong, either with us or with him. But what if the entire framework is backward? What if trust was never meant to follow understanding, but to replace it? Listen to what Jesus says to Peter. John chapter 13, verse 7.
Peter is confused. Jesus is doing something that makes no sense, washing his disciples' feet like a servant.
Peter resists, and Jesus says,
"What I am doing you do not understand now, but afterward you will understand." John chapter 13, verse 7.
Notice what Jesus doesn't say. He doesn't say, "Let me explain it first." He doesn't say, "Once you understand, then you'll be ready." He says,
"You don't understand now, but you will later."
That changes everything, because it means God does not wait for your understanding before he moves. He doesn't need you to figure it out first. He asks you to trust him while you don't. But what if trust was never meant to follow understanding? Trusting God when life doesn't make sense does not mean pretending you're not confused, shutting down every question, or forcing yourself to feel peace you don't actually have. It means choosing obedience without demanding explanation first. It means saying,
"I don't understand this, but I know you, so I'll follow anyway."
Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6 says,
Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths.
Did you catch that? Not wait until you understand. Not figure it all out. But do not lean on your understanding. Why? Because your understanding is limited, and God's is not. Isaiah chapter 55 verses 8 and 9 says,
For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts.
How far is up? You can't measure it. That's the distance between your perspective and God's. Just because something doesn't make sense to you now doesn't mean it doesn't make sense. It means you're not seeing the whole picture. And you won't. Not yet. So why does God ask for obedience before clarity? Here's where most of us get stuck. We're waiting for God to reveal the entire plan before we take step one. We say,
God, show me what you want me to do.
and when He does, when He opens a door, gives direction, nudges us forward, we hesitate. Because it doesn't fit our expectations. It doesn't make sense yet. It feels too small, too unclear, too uncomfortable. So we wait, we analyze, we try to reverse engineer God's will so it fits our logic. And in doing so, we miss it. Because here's the truth, a lack of understanding does not excuse a lack of obedience. God does not owe you an explanation before He asks you to trust Him. That doesn't mean He's cold, and it doesn't mean He's distant. It means He's God, and you're not. That's not harsh, that's clarity. So we might ask silently, is God still good when your life doesn't look like it? When life doesn't make sense, this is where the real battle starts. We begin to question whether God is actually good. Someone else gets healed. We don't. Someone else gets the breakthrough. We're still waiting. And slowly, quietly, a thought creeps in.
If God were really good, He wouldn't have allowed this.
That's the same lie Satan whispered to Eve in the garden.
Did God really say that?
A question meant to make her doubt whether God was truly good. And it's the same lie that shows up when your prayers go unanswered, when obedience costs more than you expected. But listen carefully. God's goodness is not defined by whether your life makes sense to you. It's defined by His character, and His character does not change. Psalm chapter 100 verse 5 says,
For the Lord is good, His steadfast love endures forever, and His faithfulness to all generations.
You see the moment. God sees eternity. You see confusion. God sees the victory already forming beyond it. And one day, maybe not today, maybe not this year, you will understand. So as we look at this now, friend, it's like God is asking you, which will you choose when nothing makes sense? So what do you do when life doesn't make sense? You choose. You can grow bitter. You can let one unanswered prayer be the reason you quit. Or you can say,
God, I don't understand this. I don't like it, but I know you, and I will trust you anyway.
what does this remind you of? That's right, it's called faith. So it's not about pretending everything's fine, but holding on when clarity is missing. When God opens a door and it doesn't make sense, walk through it anyway. When He asks you to obey and the outcome isn't clear, obey anyway, because obedience doesn't require clarity, it requires trust. And trust means knowing the one who sees what you can't. So friend, what if? Trusting God isn't about answers at all. Life will not always make sense this side of heaven. There will be unanswered questions, but you don't have to torment yourself trying to solve them all. Before you go, stay with me for just a moment. This isn't information, it's a reflection. Ask yourself, what is one thing God has already made clear that you've been waiting to understand before you obey? And what would it look like to trust His character more than your own clarity? May God bless you to be a man or woman after His own heart.
I have found in David the son of Jesse a man after my heart, who will do all my will. Acts chapter 13, verse 22.